kick off the talk, I would just like to ask the question why I even talk about this topic, why I think it's worthy of your time. And that comes from my day-to-day business. I do run a PR marketing agency for games. And we work with clients and studios from all over the world and with really different experience levels. And usually when they come to us, they have quite good ideas of certain things. They know that the trailer is important, they know a store page is important, they know they're gonna need a press kit. But when we go into more details and say we need to work on GIFs, we need to have a good PR plan about GIFs, what do you think about that? They often look a bit like that. Because I do think GIFs still have a bit of a reputation that they're just memes, and there's a lot about jokes, and it's basically just something for babies. And some of it is true, that's definitely something GIFs can be, but that's not everything GIFs are. There's way more you can do with it. So here's just a couple of scenes of different games that we either worked with or I really like in GIF form. And I think what you can see there in a couple of seconds is that those are really short clips, but already you can probably see which games you like of those, which you would want to find out more, which one you maybe don't want to find out more. But we just watched 8 games looping through 1.5 times, and you probably already have quite good connection to some of them. So I think that's the real power of GIFs. That's really what drives the format, that you get so much information across really, really quickly. And that's really helpful in a lot of channels. For example, it's not uncommon for a tweet with a nice GIF to do really well, get thousands of retweets. We're going to talk about Imgur today. If you reach the front page, you can get hundreds of thousands of views. If you happen to land on the Reddit front page, you can get millions of views. We do deal a lot with PR, as a PR with journalists and influencers, and our success rate of getting pitches through with them while having a nice GIF is way higher than without them. And you can also do GIFs on storefronts, or Steam, for example, or on Kickstarter, and that, of course, can mean more money, more conversion. And I think it's also, at the moment, that GIFs are more relevant than they used to be. There's a couple of factors for that. One is that there are just way more games than there used to be. There's always more games coming out and more and more and more. So the attention span, I think, of a lot of parties, be it publishers, platform holders, your players, press, and so on, their attention spans are just really short. So often you just have a couple of seconds to really convince them about your game, or at least get them interested to find out more. And if you watch a couple of other talks from this year GDC and read current blog posts, I'm sure you're going to notice that something we call the grind is more important than ever. It seems that for a lot of games, the most secure way to have a successful launch and successful phase is to build your own community. And to build a community, you need to have a constant output and constantly get new people in from new channels. You constantly need to break out of your little bubble and reach more people, and that's what we call the grind. And GIFs are really useful for that, because if you work for trailers, for example, they're really expensive to make. They a lot of work, a lot of effort. If they don't work out, that's a big problem. If you make a couple of GIFs and 1 or 2 don't work out, that's fine. So they're just easier to produce, and this is helpful in the current environment. And I think that the whole philosophy of that the grind is really important is also supported by Steam, because they make wish lists very important at the moment. So really, like, working a couple of months hard to break out of your bubble, to reach a lot of people, get a lot of wish lists, is just really important right now. So what we want to talk about today is 3 topics. We want to talk what a good GIF looks like, how to make a good GIF, and where to post it. Before we do that, we have to get a bit of an awkward topic out of the way. That is how to really pronounce GIF, because some people say GIF and some say GIF. So I really wanted to know how to really pronounce GIF. So I went on howtoreallypronounce.gif.com, and they say you say gift, so like GIF but without the T. So I'm going to say GIF, and it looks like there's a lot of people that feel really strongly about this, so strongly that you can buy T-shirts and stickers. I don't feel strongly about this. If you want to say GIF, that's totally fine by me, but I'm going to go with GIF for today. And what was another thing? It's more like a definition for the talk today. I see GIF more of a philosophy than a file format. And what I mean by that is, obviously GIF is a file format, but sometimes you just take a short video and post that on Twitter. Sometimes you use Giphy, sometimes you use some HTML format. And for me, that all counts as GIF. So when I say GIF today, I just mean like a short video clip of your game that you post somewhere. And before we start off, a few things that might be helpful to know about me. My name is Thomas Reisenecker. I really like having my name in flame font. I also founded a PR agency in Brighton, UK. I worked in PR for years. Worked on over 70 titles in the beginning, quite big ones like League of Legends and Paladins. And now we really focus on, with their own agency, focus on premium indie games like Orwell, Omno, Heaven's Vault, Bury Me My Love, that kind of game. Which I think gets me in a quite good position to talk about a topic like that, because we deal with a really big quantity of games. And obviously, if you work on so many different projects, you also get a lot of different data and see how different campaigns work out. And working with those small indies, they really work on a budget often that's very tight, so they really depend on really efficient communication methods. So what does a good GIF look like? If you just want to know what a GIF needs to look like to get on the front page of Reddit, if I would know that, I would not be standing here. I would be on an island having a cocktail. It's really hard to figure out what really connects in a GIF. I've thought about it a lot. There's not one universal template you can take. I think it really boils down to figure out what the core of your game is and then test a lot of different things to see what resonates. I think that's a really important part. So while we can't put up a formula how you make the perfect GIF, we can go through different GIFs that hopefully inspire you and show you different categories you can go down and experiment. But it really comes down per game, what is the ideal GIF for what it is, I think. So GIFs can be really good to use for gameplay GIFs. This is the most simple form of a GIF, I think. It's just recording like gameplay footage. And it can be really useful, for example, to show really complex gameplay mechanics. That's a game called Eastshade. It looks really beautiful. You walk around, you take pictures of the landscape, and they transport into paintings. And if you describe that in a sentence, that probably sounds a bit boring, but if you see it like that, it's really great. So within 1 second, you can really see how that game works. Another way, a certain type of game that just works good in GIFs, if a game just looks really cool. This is my friend Pedro, that works excellent. They have a really big social following. It's definitely also made to look cool in GIFs. And another way to work with GIFs with the format and take the most out of it is, I think funny GIFs work quite well. If you have a narrative game, if you want to have a certain scene, it can really help to just have 1 or 2 lines and a punchline. It's really good to get that across. There's, of course, bug GIFs. I'm sure you've heard of them, I'm sure you've seen them. There's a game called Water Golf, and while they just look funny, they really can go big. We see some numbers here. Here's another one from a game called Overland, and all that happened there is the dog got really big, and that got 1,000 retweets. And there's no formula or like no preset how you can create funny bug GIFs. I think the lesson to learn there is whoever works on the game and can encounter bugs, I think they should be equipped with the program and the programs and the knowledge how to record GIFs. Because when it happens, it just takes a couple of seconds to record and they can really give you a big PR boost. It's really a shame to not have just that set up to record those GIFs. There's, of course, also joke GIFs. Here's a really good one from Sony Santa Monica. They were really great with God of War GIFs. And there's also event-related GIF. Here's one for Valentine's Day. And I think those are really funny. Those are really great. Those are great to entertain your community. The only thing that's important there that I think people need to know what your game is already so those GIFs work. So I would always say those are more important for more established brands than completely new games. Another GIF category that I think is often overlooked is asset GIFs. That just means using asset like a little banner on a Kickstarter page, little game description banners on a Steam page like you see on the left or on the right, just showing like more or less a menu a bit in motion. It can add a lot to just have that moving elements that makes it way less, makes it look way less boring. So I think that's a really great way to also use the GIF format. Then there's something called main GIFs, and that's probably one of the most important slides of the talk. I highly recommend making a main GIF for every game you work on. And what we see what a main GIF is, what my definition of that is, it's a mini trailer. And we use that in loads of different ways. We use it to pitch to investors, to publishers, again to press. We show it to players for really important news. That main trailer, that main GIF is like a little trailer that shows off the most important aspects of your game. And really have a good think what you want to show of your game. On the top left, we see, for example, Omno. And for that game, it was really important to show off the animation nicely. That's why it has a quite high frame rate and to show the different environments. Below, we see a game called Hamsterdam. And for that game, the goal was clearly to show off the cute protagonist, but then to show a lot of gameplay variety. So you have a lot of really short shots, but you just see there's loads of different stuff in the games. And those are quite visual games. So those main GIFs are easier to make. But then let's have a look at a game that is maybe less visual. It's called Heaven's Vault. It's an adventure game. It looks nice, but there's no explosions in it. There's a lot of walking, a lot of reading. And what we made here is that we, want to show a big gameplay, a big variety in scenarios and sceneries. That's why we have a lot of different scenes. But the other thing we want to get across is that the game is developed from the developers of 80 Days, which was a very successful game. So that's a big plus for the title. And also it has a really interesting gameplay mechanic where you decipher, where you translate a whole language. And that's something that's really complicated to show in detail, but we can spell it out in a sentence and hint at it. So the goal here really is not that people fully understand how the mechanic works, but how to get the top level pitch, like the one line what's really important about this game. So within a couple of seconds, you have that tiny trailer that explains a really complex game. Similar here for a game called Gladiobots, which was a really big challenge to get that GIF nice, because in the game you have an AI editor where you program an AI and for your robot, and then you press play and your robots fight in the arena. So that means half of the game is a menu. It's just an AI editor. So that's obviously visually not the most attractive thing. So here it was really helpful to work with text in between, really explain how the game works, have that split screen in the beginning. And again, imagine getting that game described in text form versus that little GIF. I think it makes a really big difference to get across that core what's important about this game. So what makes a good GIF? I think there are a couple of core rules that I try to follow. One is definitely it has to be eye-catching. Don't start with like a long black screen. Just like go right in, have your best scene in the beginning, because a lot of people are just going to scroll through it, and if it doesn't have anything cool in the first second, that's about it. Always assume that people don't know what your game is. Even if you've already had a couple of big tweets, there's always new people seeing your stuff. I think a good GIF has to work for newcomers as well. It doesn't need to be complete, as we saw with Heaven's Vault. It just needs to be enough that players understand what the core premise of the game is. And really important for all the social media things, of course, is that people love that stuff versus just liking it. So if you can pick between making one really, really cool GIF or 10 to 20 average GIFs, always go for the one that people love. That has the potential to be shared. On social media, stuff that is just okay is just not quite worth it. So how do we make pretty GIFs? That's actually easier than I think that a lot of people would assume. Step number one, we want to record a GIF. The quick and easy way to do that is with an on-screen recording tool. It's a little program, for example, like GIFcam, Screen to GIF, or for Mac users, Lightscape. And those are all free. And basically, they just give you like a little window on screen, and then you can record whatever is under that window, and then you have a GIF. And that's it. So if you want to make a bug GIF, that takes a couple of seconds. It's really great. There's also programs like OBS, Fraps, or QuickTime, where you can record video footage of those at that window, and that is maybe more important if you want to have a really sophisticated GIF and want to edit it later. And the really bare bones thing to get a GIF is if you have a YouTube video or a YouTube trailer, and you just go to giphy.com and you put it in there, and you literally set down the duration and the start time, and then you have a GIF. Like that's from the Untitled Goose Game. I just made that yesterday. That took like 20 minutes to do. 20 seconds, sorry. So it's extremely easy to if you already have a YouTube link with Giphy, to just make one small GIF. Pros, if you want to make a really quality GIF, or a quite challenging one because you maybe need to find a certain file size, you're going to have to cut it in a video editor. There's loads of different video editors. Usually for the purpose of a GIF, it doesn't really matter which one you use as long as you're comfortable with it. If you want to go mega hardcore, Photoshop can also edit frame by frame. Next up is just some editing tips. Those are not very scientific, but I've been just making hundreds of GIFs over the years, so this is like my top tip collection of what I do when I edit them. I really don't like having watermarks on GIFs, like little logos just in the corner, because they often look a bit markety, and it really doesn't help for a lot of social media stuff and pitching. If you have a lot of really short scenes, which happens in GIFs, I try to leave them at least on for 1 second, because I think everything below that, it's really hard for the eye to just get what's going on the screen. I really avoid having gameplay and text at the same time, so I try to have either or, because it's just such a tiny window where you see most GIFs. If needed, if you need more space, or need to cramp up more content in a short GIF, I sometimes speed up GIFs by 10%. Obviously, it really depends on your game. If you make a super realistic golfing game, maybe don't speed it up by 50% and the golfer goes like that. But if you have a narrative game and the cursor moves a bit quicker, that's probably fine. First frame is really, really important. Never ever have a black screen as a first frame. The reason for that is often when GIFs don't load for some reason, if there's preview windows, you're always going to see the first screen. So if there's any issue, that first screen is a screenshot that shows up instead of a GIF. And the next tip is start with something eye-catching. We had that shortly in the beginning. And I think that's also something Hollywood does quite a lot. If you look at trailers from really big blockbuster films now, they often start with like a 5-second summary of the real trailer, and then the trailer starts. And that, I think, is related with just getting the attention span of people immediately. That's an example of a game we made in trailer form, actually, for Omno, which starts really slow, and it tries to build up moods. And we thought, that's not going to cut it. And that's why we cut in the third scene, where the guy falls down, and you just see animation really quickly. Well, it's really important to get that mood across for the game. We want to definitely show people the animation straight away. So I think just having a really strong scene just in the first 1 or 2 seconds really helps. And that's a really practical GIF. I really like a trick. I really like that. Recycle your trailer into multiple GIFs. If you can, you finish your trailer first, and then you take your trailer and cut out 30 seconds of that and make a teaser trailer of that. And then you cut out 10 GIFs out of that and the main GIF. So with that one big trailer asset that you need to do anyway, you immediately have a whole bunch of small assets with no extra work. Step number 2, after recording and editing the GIF, is now we want to compress it. And there's a website called easygif.com. And it's so good. I don't know why it's so good. It's a bit criminal. It's for free. And you can just upload your GIFs and move a couple of sliders around and see how it compresses, how the image quality changes, how big the GIFs are. It's so good for really like precisely compressing stuff. I love it. If you compress things, if you want to get to certain size, it's really important to just figure out what is the most visual aspect of your game and then go from there. Usually there's 3 things that fight with each other, which is the frame rate, the length of the GIF, and the resolution. So if a game is like Omno and the animation is really important, you want to probably have a good frame rate. If you want to tell a little story, a little joke, but it needs to be a bit longer, you want to have certain length. If you have a game like Eastshade that looks like a really nice painting, then you probably want to have a nice resolution. And there's a good chance you can't have all 3 of those, so just make sure you know which one you want to have. Personally, I'm usually aiming for 10 to 20 frames per second for GIFs, sometimes 30 if it's really important about animation. I try to make them 5 to 15 seconds long. For emails, I usually use 500 pixels in width, and for social media, usually 600. If you don't want to do step 1 and 2 and go to step 0 and just let the community do the GIFs, that's also an option. I think there's surprisingly little games that do that. A really famous example, I think, is Polybridge. They have a really good GDC talk about that is on the Vault and on YouTube. And in the game, you build a little bridge, and it's physics-based, so there's a lot of funny stuff happening. And with the built-in GIF generator, people were sharing GIFs like crazy, and there was a really good marketing tool for them. Just from their slides, that's their top 10 posts on Reddit got 12 million views. So that was definitely worth the extra work. So in my opinion, if you have a physics-based game or a game where people can create stuff and funny thing happens, really consider putting a GIF generator in there. There's also a good evolution from that idea, from a game called Nibatus, and they took the idea one step further. So for the Kickstarter, they had a demo, and the demo had a GIF generator, and if you generate a GIF in there and then tweet about it, you can win 3 copies of the game. So they really get people in to play and share stuff, while they can also win something. So it's quite nice for the players, I think, but obviously also great from a PR point of view. So where and how do you use those GIFs? What is the best way to do that? Well, there's a lot of channels where you can use GIF. And if we would go through them one by one in detail, we would be here for a whole week. So for today, I'm just going to pick my top 5 channels that I think you can make the most out of your GIFs. And also for that, I have to say, it's a roadmap, and it gives you some tips per channels, but it's definitely not a complete thing, because there's just so much to do per channel that I'm sure you're going to find way more detailed talks about each of those. So my favorite one to use GIFs really good is Twitter. And the one really good thing about Twitter is if you have a good GIF, you can really break out of your social media bubble. So if you get a lot of if you get a lot of retweets, if you get a lot of likes, your tweet starts showing up on timelines of new people you've never heard before. So it really helps to just reach new players. Really good on Twitter is also that movements on timelines stand out quite a bit. Here's an example from Polygon Treehouse, a studio in Cambridge. And they just have a GIF, a tweet here with text versus the same with an image versus the same with a GIF. And you can clearly see that the one with motion stands out the most in the timeline, especially if you think how you use Twitter, you just probably scroll through like that. So it really helps having that first, second animation going. There's also like some stats, like David Wheely from The First Tree said, when he shared a GIF versus a screenshot, people were sharing it 10 times as much. So I think it's really worth having animated GIFs, even if just promoting a blog post or like a small menu or something. Even then, I think having some kind of motion is really important. I highly recommend just experiment with Screenshot Saturday. It's a really popular hashtag. It helps you to break out of your social media bubble even more. I would try to do that as often as you can. And I think also engine tags, that's UE4 for the Unreal Engine and hashtag made with Unity for Unity, is a fantastic source to get more traction. If you use that engine and they like your GIF and they retweet you, you get a lot of new eyes on your game. And you can do that quite a lot. And that, I think, is the beauty of Twitter, that you can basically post as much as you want. Like, obviously, 10 GIFs per day. But if you post one per week over a long period of time, that's totally fine. The people that follow your Twitter, they want to see your stuff. So they won't be offended if you tweet regularly. And it can really help to reach new people. In terms of file format, GIFs on Twitter, autoplay and the compression is quite predictable, which is nice. So autoplay is a big plus. If you upload a mobile, you have a 5 megabyte limit, from desktop 15. And I usually go with a pixel width of 600. There's different preferences with people. Like some people also like to post more like square GIFs, so they look better on mobile. I just prefer a YouTube format, but I think the important thing is the 600 pixels in width. Also mind that if you post a GIF on Twitter, often you would have that little logo in the corner that says GIF. So if you don't put anything important there, otherwise you have to reformat your GIF a bit. You can also upload short videos on Twitter. If they're under 6.5 seconds, they will auto-loop, which is great. They also have sound, and you don't struggle with file restrictions, which is also great. One thing, however, I will say that is Twitter sometimes compresses video really weird. So if you use video, check if it looks good, and if it doesn't, maybe go for a GIF instead. Facebook also added GIF support a while back, but I think it's way harder to reach new people with Facebook. So I've just mentioned here that GIF also work. I usually cross-post on both platforms, but Twitter is usually the one that gets way more traction. I think a really underrated platform is Imgur or Imgur. Don't know how to pronounce it either. I say Imgur now. If you hit the front page, which is not too hard at the moment, we have a quite good success rate because I think it's not so saturated as the other networks. You get easily 80,000 to 200,000 views. What's really popular there is something that looks like on the right, which is blog posts that are quite personal. And usually what we do is we have a nice headline, we have a first GIF, and then we describe in a sentence what is the game, and then we have another GIF, and then we describe in a sentence what happened in that GIF, and so on. And you usually have like 4 or 5 GIFs, and then you say goodbye. Really important on Imgur is that you have a really good headline in the first frame, because that's the only thing that shows up in the preview window. That's how people are going to find you. And if they upvote you enough, then you go trending. In terms of file sizes, it's really generous. You can use up to 200 megabytes per image or per video, up to 30 seconds long. And Imgur converts GIFs into videos anyway, so you might as well just use videos because it's a bit better quality. If you are not familiar with Imgur yet and you want to start a new account, it's no problem at all. It's great for Twitter and Imgur that you can just go in fresh, and if you have good content, it just gets shared and you can really reach new people. However, they have really strict spam filters. So in the beginning, don't post any links. You get a notification once you're mature enough on the platform so you can post links, but don't do it in the beginning. Also, hashtags are really essential, especially game dev and gaming. This is how people find you on Imgur. So what I would recommend is having those longer blog posts for whenever you do a big update, a big announcement, and just post like small little GIFs like on Twitter if you have a good one in between. Reddit is a bit like the holy grail of posting a GIF because, you know, on the right we saw one that has 1.6 million views. The first tree got over 3.5 million views and 50,000 views on the store page of Steam. So that's really good. The downside of Reddit, however, is like it's really hard to be successful on Reddit. But it is doable. One of the most important things is obviously they have the self-promo rules. So only 10% of your posts can be about your work and your game. So you have to just be part of the community, talk to people, post in other subreddits, so you hit that quota. That's why it's also advisable to start an account early. And I think the big one is each subreddit has different rules. They all work a bit differently. They all have different moderators. If you really want to take it seriously on Reddit, I think you really have to work through those rules, look at the community for a while, start talking to them, and just like don't go in and try to market your thing, but really try to be part of the community. But it really pays off. Often really personal headlines work, where people say, oh, I've been working on my game for 5 years, for like 2 years, I've been working with my wife on my game. All that kind of stuff is usually good to just get people's attention, that I'm a small indie dev or I'm a developer, I'm passionate about that. That's kind of stuff that usually works. You can upload direct video or you can upload GIF or Giphy. The only thing that I would never do is put YouTube links or store pages on Reddit. That's stuff that usually doesn't fly well in most subreddits. And for Reddit, I would also say, be part of the community, but don't overthink it. It's the same with Twitter. Just post stuff and see what sticks. Often you have a quite good idea what is popular about your game, but I tell you, there were so many times when we were super surprised what is actually the thing that people get really excited about your game. The next one, point number 4, is emails. And this is a pitch email we sent to press of a game called Euclidean Skies. And it's an alright email. It has like bullet points and it's bold writing and links. So it's quite well formatted for what it is. But now we look at the same email where we changed the game description with an actual GIF. And then you can see that that email is not only way shorter, it also looks way better because suddenly you can understand the game mechanic that is really complicated to explain. So my definite top tip for GIFs is like put them in emails right away. We use that if you pitch to press, publishers, influencers, to your fans, newsletters, all that kind of stuff. I think whenever you promote your game, putting that that GIF right in is really helpful. One warning that not all email programs support GIFs, and really it is Outlook that doesn't support it too well, especially older Outlook versions. The newest one does. So depending on your target group, you might need to think about that. If for some reason you only mail people with old Outlook, maybe don't use GIFs, but if that's not the case, go for GIFs. Again, mind the first frame. If a GIF doesn't load in the email for some reason, it will take the first frame as a screenshot and just show that. I usually aim to have a GIF between 1 and 4 megabytes in an email, or up to 8 megabytes if you want to push it. For example, if we email influencers, YouTubers, and streamers, we go up to 8 megabytes because often they're going to work on PCs anyway, on desktop, and they have good internet connection, so it's not a problem. But if you deal with mobile users, that's maybe a bit much. And here's also the dimensions. If I post GIFs in emails, usually try to aim between 350 and 600 px. And the last point is store pages. Steam supports GIFs officially for a while now, which is great. You can use them in banners or just to show your game. This is House Flippers, a really great example, and they show the game mechanics in a 2-second GIF and make it look really interesting, I think. You can also use GIFs in community updates, which is cool for updates, and you can use them in the award section. The only thing is that the whole Steam page shouldn't have more than 15 megabytes of combined assets. And the last point is Kickstarter. You can use GIFs there as well for banners, for game GIFs, for rewards. And I think really important there is, here we have a Kickstarter page, and you're going to get a lot of traffic, but only a very small fraction of those people on your page will actually click on the video and watch it. So what I would highly recommend is just having a GIF quite on top that those people that don't click on the video or don't necessarily want to watch it still see your game in motion. And they don't have any file size limits, but of course, keep in mind that you don't put up like 5 gigabytes of GIFs because then the site probably just breaks. So just a summary slide for the end. Plan your GIF is step number 1. I think really important to plan GIFs properly in your PR plan and save time so you can actually make them. Prepare for main GIFs. Remember the rules for the GIFs that keep on giving. If you go into GIF making, firstly, you want to record your video with on-screen recording with the different tools we talked about. Then go to compression, easygif.com, highly recommend it. And think about which visual aspect out of those 3 is the most important for your GIF. Always keep in mind, if you have a trailer, recycle it, make 100 GIFs out of it, really useful, why not? And whenever you do a GIF, mind the first frame and make sure the first frame is really good. To posting your GIFs, Twitter is my favorite channel. Movement really stands out there, and you can experiment and break out of your social bubble a lot. Imgur is, at the moment, really good for games to reach people. First frame is important. Headline is really important. And never ever forget the hashtags, because otherwise your posts just disappear. On Reddit, there's no easy rule apart from try to really be part of the community and try to understand it, live with it, write comments, and see how other people do stuff. In emails, always post GIFs in them if you can, but really mind the file sizes. For the Steam store page, the same, really great to use GIFs, but wouldn't go over 15 megabytes. And on Kickstarter, I would definitely focus on the top GIF just under the trailer so people see a game in motion anyway, even if you don't watch the video. Thanks a lot for listening.